what's up you guys? My name is Amber, welcome to my channel, and today we are going to be discussing Moxie by Jennifer Mathieu. Now, if you have been around on my channel for a while, you may actually recall that I have reviewed Moxie before about 2 years ago, but I'm gonna be real with y'all, the video was not very good. I would not recommend watching in the least self-deprecating way possible. So I did want to go ahead and retake a look at the book, considering it is probably one of my favorites in recent years. And apparently the movie is coming out. I had heard rumors that the book was allegedly going to be adapted into a film, and then I literally didn't hear anything about it again. So I was like, oh, I wonder if that's still a thing. Looked it up and literally found out that the movie was going to be coming out a week from when I finished reading this. So if all goes according to plan, the movie will have been released the day that I release this video. I am personally really excited to see what they do with the film because I think there's a lot of potential, but I did want to go ahead and review the book today. Before we get too far into this review, I do want to mention a few trigger warnings that are involved with the book, including sexism, verbal and sexual harassment, as well as sexual assault. So if any of these things are potentially triggering for you, please have extreme discretion while watching the rest of this review, reading the book, and potentially watching the movie. But with all of that said, Moxie is a young adult book that centers around Vivian, who goes to high school in a small town in Texas where pretty much harassment and sexism is the normal at their school, most of it coming from the high school football team. Being in a small town that most of its entertainment centers around the football team, plus the captain being the principal's son, there really isn't much any of the girls can do about it. Until in a fit of rage, Vivian decides to take a note from her mom's old Riot Girl days and creates a feminist zine that she leaves in the bathroom at school. And at first, you know, a lot of people are very hesitant about it. You know, the girls, a few girls are into it, but not a lot are. So she's not sure if she's going to continue it until the harassment and issues start to escalate. So do the Moxie calls to action. I should go back. The feminist zine that she creates is called Moxie, and she leaves it anonymous, she does not connect herself to the zine in any way. As the book continues, the actions from the football team and all of the asshole guys at school escalate, and so do different relationships that Vivian starts to make with other people around the school. The girls start banding together a little bit more. There are other girls who adopt the name Moxie for their own projects and starts to create just a ton of good feminist shit. You'll love to see it, but the administration of the school does not take very well to it. Things continue to escalate until the majority of the girls at the school are threatened with expulsion, and Vivian has to decide whether or not remaining anonymous is worth the fall of the innocent. Now, that definitely is not the only thing that the book features. It does involve Vivian's relationships with other people, including her family, new friends that she makes, a boyfriend that she gets, and the book does discuss a lot of really important issues that I do think are very important to talk about, especially when aimed at a young adult audience. I'd say that the book is definitely ideal for teenagers to read, and it is definitely the type of book that I wish I had had access to in high school. But at the same time, I'm not sure if my own personal high school self would have been as prepared for it as I am now as an adult, because I did most of my political learning while I was in high school, and it was definitely later because growing up my family was not a family that was super into politics or social justice issues or anything like that, because my mom was just not somebody who was into politics, and she always interpreted a conversation about it to be an argument, so she always shut it down before it could go anywhere. So I am not somebody who grew up thinking about a lot of different issues like that. And then enter high school, I ended up joining my sophomore year the theater guild, which was made up of some of the most liberal and politically educated people that I have met to this day. And I did a lot of catching up learning back then. So like I said, I'm not 100% sure my high school self would have been as receptive to this as I am now, being a little bit more educated and having my own opinions about a lot of different topics, which are fiercely feminist in case it weren't obvious. Another major contributing plot, theme, topic that is addressed in the book is the Riot Girls movement. So there are a ton of music references made in the books, whether it be specific bands or specific songs, of which I decided to compile all of the references that were made and create a Spotify playlist. So if anybody wants to check out that playlist to get a kind of vibe going for the book, I do have that on Spotify and we'll link that down below. The playlist is called Moxie Girls Fight Back and features bands like Bikini Kill, The Runaways, Bratmobile. There is some Sonic Youth and Black Flag. That is something that I myself am incredibly thrilled is involved in the book, because I am a very music heavy person. Like, music plays a huge role in my life, and it's fun seeing that be the case for other characters in books, you know, ideally in other media as well, but for like people to have music so deeply personal to them and without wanting to be musicians themselves. Because I feel like I don't see any media created where people are like super into music without wanting to be in the music industry. So it's really, really fun to see that Vivian is just super into all of her mom's old Riot Girl stuff without being like, oh, I want to run away and join a punk band. She's just a high schooler and teenager who isn't quite sure what she wants to do other than like go to college, she guesses. So, that is really, really fun to see. For anybody who may be confused by my repeated mention of the Riot Girls movement, like back in the 90s, it was just all of the female fronted and just like girl punk bands who like didn't take shit from anyone, who wanted to create these like femme-centered spaces so like girls could feel safe and, you know, be able to be a part of the underground music scene in a safe and like positive way. The book also discusses a lot of very, very real topics and issues that we are still faced with. Like, it does address a lot of the casual and normalized harassment that girls go through on a pretty much daily basis in certain situations. It discusses and addresses the stigma and the negative connotations that the term feminism has, and shows, you know, characters in the book learning that it's not something that is negative, that there are a lot of stereotypes, and that for certain people it is a very, very heavy word with a lot of baggage. And, you know, it shows character development learning to embrace the term, and that it really is meant to be something about equality, and that it's not meant to be this, you know, negative thing. It also addresses the idea of not all guys, and how there are a lot of guys who do get very, very offensive when generalizations are made. And it addresses the fact that, like, obviously not all guys are like that, but that there are enough to make these generalizations. And it discusses things like familial relations and having differing opinions from people in your family and how that can affect your relationships with them. Especially from the perspective of being from a small conservative town in Texas. You know, anything outside of that is not exactly embraced at all times. And it also discusses the topic of sexual assault and people not necessarily believing those who speak out about it. I do think that a lot of the topics are addressed very, very tastefully in a way that doesn't feel forced, which I do find a lot of more feminist works making it like it doesn't feel very natural. It feels very forced or almost exaggerated. And while I do think that the book does have elements where it is a little bit exaggerated for the purpose of example, it doesn't at all feel unrealistic, where a lot of other YA books definitely do. And again, there are definitely certain aspects of it that are a little bit cliche, but again, in a more realistic way versus in a way that might take you out of reading. The book is also written fairly well. I find it to be very, very enjoyable, easy to read without feeling too simple. This is personally, I believe, my third time reading the book because I continue to enjoy it just as much, if not more, than I do the last time. It's just one of those books that's easy to continue to reread, and there are definitely a lot of books that are not like that, for myself at least. I have very, very few books that I enjoy reading over and over again. I am especially thrilled that this book is actually getting a film adaptation. Obviously, I don't know what that adaptation is like at this point in time. I really, really hope that they did the book justice, because I think that overall the story is really, really important, and like a lot of the topics that it addresses I think is very, very relatable and necessary for this generation's teenagers to be talking about and discussing in safe and productive ways, especially with Amy Poehler directing, because she's actually one of the people who has like quote excerpts on the book and who I think overall gets the vibe. So I have a lot of hope that the movie will have the same overall message of female empowerment and girls supporting girls, and being able to speak up and fight against harassment and assault and sexism. For people who are still newer to that idea, or who aren't necessarily sold on the whole feminism thing, I feel like I am describing the book to be very aggressive and in your face. I mean, obviously the overall theme of the book is more or less feminism, but I think it's done in a way that it could still be enjoyable to those who are still not 100% sold on the topic and may potentially have the capability of swaying people's opinions in favor of it. I would definitely be curious to get the perspective of the book from either like a guy or somebody who is definitively not a feminist, to see what exactly they think of the book, because the first time that I read the book, and like obviously every time since, like I have made up my own mind about the whole thing, and I myself am fiercely feminist. I am here for, you know, equal rights for everyone, especially when it comes to girls and femmes, because it's super necessary. But there are also other issues when it comes to that. Like, I do like that the book did address some of the differences in like popularity, and then there are also a few instances where it vaguely addresses differences in race, all of which are integral parts of feminism itself. Because like, if it's not intersectional, get fucked. Because like, if it's not intersectional, what's the point? I do think that they probably could have gone a little bit more into other issues, because the point of view is told from a presumably straight white girl. So, you know, there's only so much perspective you can get coming from a straight white cis person. You know, there are only so many issues you can address at one time. Like, I'm not saying that as a criticism of the book itself. But yes, so if it weren't obvious, I definitely would very, very highly recommend the book. I would also love to hear your guys' opinions, and once it comes out, like, let me know what you guys think of the movie as well. I am definitely curious to see how the movie changes things in the book. I did watch the trailer, and I have some thoughts. I don't dislike it, but I am afraid that they are going to change a few key aspects that I was personally a big fan of, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just going to be different. You know, you can't hold film adaptations to super high standards, because more often than not, they're very different from the book. I did like the inclusion of a trans character in the movie. I think that is a very, very important difference for the positive, as long as it's handled tastefully. But the character is played by an actual transgender woman, so I'm really, really excited for that aspect. Again, I do very, very highly recommend the book. If you do end up reading it, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions down below. But anyways, thank you guys so, so much for watching. I had a blast hanging out with y'all. Peace.